In this video, we are going to build a TypeRacer clone. TypeRacer is an application where people can invite their friends and they can test the speeds of typing and they can compete with each other and see who types the fastest among them. So in this video, we are going to build something very similar to that where you can invite your friends and you will have a leaderboard where you can see how many words have been typed by you and your fellow mates in just 1 minute. So the technologies we are going to use here are Node.js, Socket.io, which is a WebSocket library for Node.js, and we are also going to use Next.js for the front end. So we are going to use the Next.js app routers, so don't worry, you are eating some latest stuff. So yeah, before we proceed, I want to give a disclaimer. This video is not going to copy TypeRacer from start to finish. We are not going to copy the UI. We are not going to copy all of the concepts that TypeRacer has. We are not going to copy all of the features. Instead, we are going to focus on the core parts of typing battles between your friends. So if you are looking for something like a complete TypeRacer clone with all of the UI and stuff, unfortunately, my friend, this is not the video for you. You can hop off. But if you want to learn some technologies like WebSockets and stuff, you are in for a treat. So yeah, let's get into the demo. All right, so this is the game. It says typing battle. I'm not using TypeRacer a lot here because I don't want people to think that this is a complete TypeRacer clone. But yeah, you can create a game or you can join a game. So we do not already have a game, so we are going to create a game. And now you are prompted to enter your name. This will be your nickname during your game. So I'm going to call myself Atharva. And now I'm going to join the game. Now I will be alone here. The leaderboard is completely empty. It's just me. And now how do I invite my friends? So the invite code, you can find it here. So you might be asking, like, why have you not added a copy button for the invite? Because I have a few things that I want you to do. I don't want you to just copy entire thing. There are a few improvements that this app needs, and I'm pretty sure you should be able to do it if you follow along and if you are able to build this yourself. So I have copied the invite. Now I can go to localhost 3000 here and I can paste the invite code and I can call myself noobmaster123. If you know, you know. I'm going to join the game. Perfect. Now we have 2 players. It says waiting for player to join, but this is not the host. The Atharva account is the host. So I can start the game here. Now, if I start the game, I'm going to be presented with this huge box and I have to type along. So I can say they were lost without the mopy, I guess so. Whatever. And here I can just say they were lost. Not list. Okay, so if you type something other thing, like if I type list, it won't count, and anything other than that will also not count. So if I just like, everything needs to be correct, or else like even the next word you type won't be counted. So this is how this works, and this will run for 1 minute. We do not have a timer here, but you can always add that, and that's one of the things I want to add. And this one, because people usually just follow all the clones blindly and did not add anything for themselves. It's like if you add the small quality of life changes, you already have entire framework. You just need to add some small quality of life changes to make sure that this is a complete game. So yeah, I'm pretty sure 1 minute should be anyways done for till now. I'm not sure what's happening. Oh yeah, so it says game finished. Now we have the final leaderboards. This is the noob master account. We are at second. If we check our Atharva account, the leaderboard is the same. We have 1. So like if there are more people, the leaderboard will be adjusted automatically. So if noob master gain more points, he will be at the first position and Atharva will be below noob master. So yeah, in Atharva account, I can even start the game again. So that will reset the leaderboards and we will be back to 0 and the game will be started at both sides. So yeah, this is the basic gist of how the game works. There are a lot of quality of life changes you can add. There are a lot of things you can add, like just a copy button or even like a timer. A lot of things you can work on. So let's forget that. Now we are gonna just work on the actual application. We are gonna work on the server. We are gonna work on the client. We are gonna put everything together, and then yeah, we are gonna clone this exactly. So yeah, let's get started. Before we move on, I have one favor to ask. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. That does a lot for this channel. And yeah, I'll wait for 5 seconds. Do it. Wait, I don't think you have done it yet. So why don't you just do it? Another 5 seconds. Yeah, anyways, like I'm pretty sure you must have done it by now. If not, then we have a problem here. Anyways. So we are in our terminal. First of all, we need to create a monorepo. Why are we using a monorepo? Nothing specific reason. Only the performance is good, and I'm getting a lot of requests from my YouTube subscribers that, hey, build a new video on Turborepo and make an actual project with it. So yeah, here we go. to create a turborepo, I'm going to use pnpx. Please do not use npm, it's very slow. Like unless you have a very specific reason you want to use it, please don't use it. Go for like pnpm or even bun. I think bun has some problems here and there, but I think you should be fine with this project. So I'm going to use pnpm. So I'm going to use pnpx create turbo. I'm going to use latest tag here because in the documentation they say use latest tag. I already have a video on turborepo, so you can always check that. I will have it in the description below. So turbo latest, I'm going to call it TypeRacer YT because I already have one in this folder. So yeah, let's go. This should not take a lot of time. All right, we are going to use pnpm workspace. So just use whatever is better for you. I'm just going to use pnpm. It's going to download the files, then it's going to install the dependencies, and then we will be good to go. All right, it has installed some stuff like docs and web. We actually do not need both of them. We will be removing them. So let's go and open code here. We will be not here actually. We will be going to TypeRacer YT, and we will be doing code dot, and we will be opening VS Code here. Now first things first, we need to remove some stuff. We do not need docs. We are gonna delete it. We also do not need web. We will create our own later. So I'm gonna delete web also. In packages, we actually do not even need a package, but these two apparently are needed by Next.js to work, and we are going to use Next.js later in the video. So we are going to leave these two and we are going to delete the UI one. So we do not need this. All right, perfect. Now we can go here. First we will work on the front end, and then we will work on the actual client. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it server. And in server, we actually need to run some commands. So let's open the terminal. I'm gonna go to, I hope you can see the terminal. Yeah, let's go to apps/server, and here I'm gonna do pnpm init. I'm not really sure if you can see the terminal right here, so I'm just gonna bring the terminal like this, and I'm just gonna go to apps server, and I'm gonna clear this, and I'm gonna do pnpm init. Perfect. Now we need to install some packages. So pnpm install -d. First of all, we need TypeScript because we will be using TypeScript in this video. Second, we will need nodemon because we will be using our dev server, so that we do not need to always compile and run our server. Nodemon will help us a lot. Other than that, we are using TS node so that nodemon works as expected. So I'm just gonna hit enter. This will install all of the 3 dependencies, actually developer dependencies. Alrighty, now we can do clear, and for the normal dependencies we only need one. So pnpm install socket.io. Now you can go fancy and install express and stuff, and you can have a lot of features there that way. But for the scope of this video, I'm just gonna use socket.io, and that's just enough for us. Perfect. Now what we need to do is we need to set a few things up. First of all, we need to create a tsconfig file. So we are going to use npx tsc init. The reason I'm not using pnpm here is for some reason it doesn't work with pnpm or any other thing. I have tried it using with bun and pnpm. It doesn't work. It only works with npx for me. For you it might work. I'm not really sure what's the problem here, but let's see. All right, now we can go back. We have installed all the packages, so we do not really need to be here again. And now what we can do is we can go to tsconfig.json. We are first of all going to change the out directory. So just search for out there and you will find this one. You can make it the output should go into build. I'm going to you can even name it anything else. You can even make it a dist. I'm going to make it a build. It's just a personal preference. And here you are going to need a few scripts. So first of all, we need a start script, but before that we need to actually change the path for the main. So we are going to run a JavaScript file in production. So how we are coding in TypeScript, right? So you need to actually build the TypeScript project and convert it into JavaScript, and we need to link the actual JavaScript file. So the first file actually we need, the entry point will be index.ts. So whenever this will be transpiled into JS, it will be actually index.js inside the build folder, because we just set the build folder as the out directory. So we are going to say ./build/index.js, and now in start we are going to have node. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, GitHub Copilot. For dev, no, this is not the complicated command we need. We just need nodemon index.ts and it will just work. Nodemon, if you don't already know nodemon, it basically just refreshes your server whenever there is some change, so that you do not need to run it every single time. Yeah, we also need a build script. So like when you deploy, or like if you even try to build, if you want like your transpiled JS versions, you can simply run the build command and you will have your JS equivalent code. Now we need to set up our socket.io server, so let's do that. By the way, if you don't already know, you can always go to socket.io documentation. So I'm just going to remove this part and socket.io.doc/v3, and you can go to the server part and you can go to the installation, like initialization or installation part. So like you can also like we already have installed it, so like this is the package we needed to install. You can go to the initialization part. Yeah, you can do it like this. We are basically also gonna do like this. There's a lot of things you can get from the socket.io documentation. Even like building this myself, I was referring to the documentation a lot. So don't think that I'm just like magically knowing all of the stuff. So feel free to like refer to documentation when things are not clear to you. All right. So we are going to use this method. So we are first gonna have like a port. So const port is equal to process.env.port. So Athava, we haven't even created an environment variable. Why are you? Okay, what's the problem here? Alright, it appears that we need to install a package which is like types for node. So let's do that. Pnpm install, not inside this. We are actually gonna go inside apps server, and here we're gonna do pnpm install. This is gonna be a developer dependency. So add types node. Perfect. I think this should fix every single thing. Perfect. Let's go back and now let's try it out. Yeah, the error is gone. The reason we are having like a process.env.port is because like if you are deploying it to services like render, this is not sponsored video by the way, so if like upload like pushing it to like services, they have their own port, so you just like have this variable process.env.port, or like if it's a local environment, it will just completely ignore the environment variable and just use your specified port, which is 8080 in my case. Please do not use 3000 because we will be using Next.js, which relies on the port 3000. So now let's create an HTTP server. So const HTTP server is equal to create server. We needed that from HTTP, not from any other packages. So we are gonna create the server, and now we are going to create a socket.io instance. So const io is equal to new server, and we are gonna import it from socket.io, and we are gonna just pass in the HTTP server, and we are gonna have some options. So before we even move, like I wanna explain you why we are plugging the HTTP server here. Is because this HTTP server is like an actual server, and the things you plug into it are actually based on that server. So like if you want an Express.js application and if you want a socket.io instance running on a same HTTP server, you can actually plug this HTTP server both in your Express.js application and in your socket.io. So could you do it without HTTP server? Yes. Are we doing it without it? No. Why? Because if you decided if you want to add like an Express server, you actually need to create an HTTP server and then you need to actually plug it in. So like if you are using two different things, you need an HTTP server. That's why I did it. I think this is a way better thing to do than just like using just IO. It's just my personal opinion. If you don't want to just go like with a socket.io way, just check the documentation and see how you can do it very straightforward way. But you still need to configure COS, so we need to do COS here. So we need to pass in an origin, which is like we are going to allow requests from all origins, and we are also going to allow methods like we are also going to allow get and post. So get post, we are going to allow these methods. Perfect. And now we are going to do HTTP server dot listen. We are going to listen on port, and then we are going to have a callback where we are going to do a console.log. Oops. And where we are going to say server is running on port. Perfect. And this is just the entry point. Now what we can do, we can go to our terminal and we can say clear, we can do pnpm dev, and now this should start up every single thing in our monorepo, but we only have the server right now, so it's only going to start the server in our development environment. Now note that since we are using dev command inside of this package.json file, that's why it's able to detect the development mode for our node.js. So if you like change this to like dev atharva or something, anything like that, you need to actually configure that in your turborepo. So it's better you just leave it to dev, unless you have like some very specific use case that's valid. Alright, so what do we need to do? We have actually done with this. What you could do is like you could completely put everything in one single file and just call it a day and it will work, but I don't think that's the correct option here. I think we should create a new file to set up all our Socket.io listeners so that we can listen to events sent by the client side. So we will create a new file here. We are going to call in the server for the server thing, and we are going to call it setup listeners.ts. Perfect. And here we are going to do export function setup listeners, and we are going to have an IO here which is going to have a type. So let's just open the function. We need a type for this. So if this is a hack, so like if we go here and just hover about it, we get the type of server. We do not need all of the additional things here. You could have it will work, but we just need the server, which comes from Socket.io. So let's just go ahead and let's just type it with server from Socket.io. Perfect. Now it will not cry if we like just pass in the IO here. So like we can do setup listeners and we can just pass in IO here and it will just work. So if there are no red lines here, that means it will work. So we have like passed in the correct types. Okay, let me tell you, if you're a beginner in JavaScript or TypeScript, this next part might have you a little confused. So please make sure that you give yourself enough time to understand this code. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this IO and we're going to listen to an event, which is going to be the connection event, which is a default provided by Socket.io. So like if somebody connects, they will be forwarded to this event listener. So we will have a socket here. And unfortunately it appears that there is something wrong. This needs to be, this is a function. Let's just trust the process and see if the error goes away. Yeah, it does. And you can already get the socket, which is like the type of socket. You do not need to type it. So now what you can do is you can simply do a console log, new connection. So like every time somebody joins, this will be logged in your server, and you can just print in the socket.id, which will be unique to every single client. So that way you can differentiate. Socket ID is the way you can differentiate between your different clients. All right. So within this, you can create with different listeners. So like somebody joins, you can create listeners for them. So you need to have all of the rest of the listeners here. So you like we are gonna have one listener which is called as join game. So we can do like socket.on join game. This is not a default. You can like name it anything. I'm gonna name it join game, and this will have a callback function, and the params you pass here is custom. You can like have any params here. So the params I want here is one room ID, which is going to be a string, and I want a name for the user, which is also going to be a string. So like whenever somebody is trying to join a game, we first need the room ID for the game he wants to join. Second, we need the name of the person. So yeah, you saw in the demo, like we asked for the nickname. So that's basically which is going to be passed here. Now we can go ahead and we can do first check. We can like if the room ID does not exist, or like if the name does not exist. I don't think we should like have this for name here exactly. Like I think it's a good thing to have, but already I think we should do it separately, because like I will show you. So like socket.emit. So how do you send a event to your client? So we can do socket.emit. So like to listen an event, it's a socket.on, but to send an event, it's a socket.emit, and socket.emit will only emit an event to the specific client, not to every single person. So yeah, don't get confused about it, because there will be places where we'll be sending events to mass. So like a specific room, like with a bunch of players. So don't get confused. Socket.emit directly only sends like this is socket, this is referring to the one person, so we are sending it only to one person. So we are passing an error event, and we are passing the message as invalid room ID. And also we can create a new one. So like if name, I actually don't have it because I check it on the Next.js site. So I mean, yeah, but like you still should have it. So socket.emit, and I can have error and please provide nickname. All right. What I want to do is I want to remove the brackets. We do not need them. And what I want to do is like have return here. So like if somebody provides wrong room IDs, the execution will stop here and they will not proceed any further, or there will be like security things. So yeah, we need to have a return here, don't forget that. After the checks are done, we want to join the room actually. So how do we do that? We can do socket.join and we can pass in a room ID. So I'm just going to pass in the room ID. So we are not going to check if the like room is only like if it doesn't exist, we are going to throw an error. We are going to do like if the room does not exist, we are going to create that room. It's as simple as that. So yeah, we're just going to join the room. So socket.join means like Socket.io has this native functionality where you can join specific rooms, and these rooms you can like emit events to these rooms, or like you can do stuff with it. So like if you want to group your users, like if you have a group chat, you can create a room for that and you can add all of the people inside it and you can do stuff. So this is basically the room. So for one game we are going to create a room and we're going to join that room. So yeah, I know my explanations are getting too explanatory, but like I want to keep this video easier to understand for people, that's why. So now there are two things, like once you're joining a room, there might be two things: one, the game already exists, or one, the game does not exist. So how do we keep track of rooms? First of all, before we even keep track of rooms, we need to first create a game, right? How are you supposed to keep track of a game when you don't have a game? Sounds confusing, right? We need to first create a new class that represents a game, and like whenever there are new people joining in, whenever there are new games being made, we can create a new instance of that class, like objects, and we can store them inside a map. So I will explain you everything, but first of all we will create a class. So here we are going to go into server, we are going to create a new folder, call it as classes, and I'm going to create a new folder called as game.ts. Now we can do export class game, and yeah, this is basically a class. So what I'm going to do here is like in setup listeners, don't worry about this, we are going to add stuff here. Basically your entire game logic is going to be here. So for now it's going to be empty, but what I want to do here is I want to create a map which keeps track of the game. So we are not handling any database or stuff. This is all going to like non-persistent. So like if you restart the server, all the active games will be destroyed. So yeah, export const rooms. Export I'm just using because we might need later. In this video we are not, but like you might. But okay, I'm just gonna remove the export, forget it. So new map, we are gonna use a map. Map is a key value pair thingy. So like you can have like the room ID and the associated class on instance, like the object with it. So we can like have the key should be a string and the value should be a game object. Yeah, and now we can name it. No, we just need to do it like this. And now this map will contain a key value pair. So the key will be the actual room ID and the game will be the actual object. So like the actual game instance. So you can actually access it from here. So we want to do two things here. So like I want to do if we need to do check if the room already exists or not. So like if the room already exists, we just want the player to join. If the room does not exist, we want to create the room. So we're going to do room.has rooms.has, and I'm just going to pass in room ID. So this is a very good function for a map. So like it just check if the game instance exists for this or not. And yeah, for this case the room exists, and we are also going to have an else block here which says that the room does not exist. Here we can do some stuff like getting the actual game. So we can do const game is equal to rooms.get room id. Yeah, and now we have this game instance here which we can use, and for some reason this can also be undefined, so you can see it here. So we need to do some checks. So like if we do know that it exists because it has a has property and we are only storing games the game instances there, but just to satisfy TypeScript I'm going to do this. So return socket dot emit, we are going to pass in an error which is going to be game not found, which technically should never execute, but we are going to have it here. Alright, now the next thing will be to join a game, but before we create the join the game logic, we actually need to work with the classes because we need to actually execute a function inside the class. So yeah, let's work on the class now. Alright, so we are gonna start with the class. If you don't already know class, I think it's like a very good concept you should know of. Like whenever you are using like instances of something, I think the best way to do it is like the class, and this is the first project I have been implementing this. So yeah, before I have been doing it in C++ and stuff, but not really in JavaScript and TypeScript because I'm more used to like the front end stuff where like React and stuff where it's like a functional based programming and classes are almost never used. So okay, let's forget about that, and we are going to first create some properties. So like it's basically variables inside a class. So I'm gonna have like the first one is like you don't have to like use const and stuff here. These are basically public properties. So first we are gonna have a game status. You could have values here, but I do not want to have them. I'm just gonna have the types here for these. So the types is going to be like it's going to be a string, but it's only going to three choice. It's only going to be having three choices. So like it's going to be have not started. Like imagine like what a game status should have technically. It should be like not started, it should be in progress and in finished, right? I think realistically these are only three statuses for our game that we are building. So yeah, in progress and finished. I think this should work, but there's some error here. Game status has no initializer. Yeah, actually there is no initializer. We need to actually create it. Don't worry, we will create a constructor and we will assign all the values to it. Don't worry for it right now, ignore the error. Let's move on. Second thing we need is the game ID actually, which we will get through constructor, which is going to be a string. The third thing we need is the players. It's going to be an array, but array of objects. So in an object we will have an ID of the player, so it's going to be a socket ID, so it's going to be a string. The second thing we need is a score of the person, so like how many words he has typed till now, so number. And the third thing we need, this is not supposed to be a comma, this is supposed to be an semicolon. And this is the type definition, by the way. So if you're using JavaScript, you do not need to do all of this. Name, string, but I really suggest that you use TypeScript because it's very important. The next thing we need is the actual server instance, so like socket.io instance. So this is going to be a socket.io instance from, and we are needing this because we need to actually emit a lot of events. So we need the instance here, like the actual instance we created before, so that we can do all of the stuff we need. The next thing we need is the game host. So let's have him. We saw how like the only game host can start the game. So we need the actual ID of the game host here. The next thing we need is the paragraph which will be displayed to the user. It's not actually a constant paragraph. We are fetching it from an API. We are going to do that later, but let's have it here. Perfect. Now let's figure out all of these error. We are going to have a constructor and we are going to accept an ID, which is going to be a string. We are going to accept IO, which is going to be a server instance. And then we are going to accept a host, which is going to be a string, basically a game host. And now you can just assign values. So this dot game ID is equal to ID. Then we can do this dot players, and an initial game would have empty players. You might argue that the first person joining should be here, but we will be doing that in a separate function. We will be exposing a join player function so that the setup listeners file can have access to it and it can add players to our class. So yeah. And then we need this dot io is equal to io. And next we need this dot game host is equal to host. This dot game status We are going to set it to not started. Next we need this dot paragraph, which is going to be empty because we are going to fetch it from an API. So yeah, all of the errors are gone. Now we do need a setup listeners function here. So like this function will actually function. Hold on. So we do not need to provide function like this. We can just set up listeners, and we just need a socket instance. So like this is different from the server instance which we are talking about. So let me just type this and we can proceed in explanation. All right, so what the plan is, like the listener thing in Socket.io works like you cannot set a listener for an entire room. You need to have listeners for specific clients. So whenever somebody joins, you need to set up listeners for all of those people who are in the lobby, so like who are in the room. So like whenever somebody joins, you are executing the join player function inside the class, which we will just make. And the join player needs to ensure that all the listeners are set up for that person so that the game works as intended. There are no problems. So the join player function will call this function eventually. So this is just an advanced explanation I'm giving you. We are going to leave this function empty for now. The next thing we are going to work on is the join players. All right, so join player. And we are going to accept a few things. It's going to be, first is going to be ID, so it's going to be a string. Then we are going to accept a name, which is going to be a string. Then we are going to accept a socket, which is going to be a socket instance, which we are eventually going to pass into the setup listeners function. But let's not worry about it right now. Now a few checks. First of all, if the game is in progress, we are going to have an error. So if this dot game status is equal to in progress, we are gonna have an error. So return error, not like that, socket dot emit, and we can have an error in here, and we can just pass in the error. Game has already started. Please wait for it to end before joining. I think this should be good enough, right? Perfect. Now we can just push this player. So like if the game is not started yet, it's not like in progress, it's we are good to push this player inside our class, and we are ready to register that player. So how do we do that? We are gonna do this dot players dot push. Now we can simply pass in an object, and TypeScript will help you here. So if we can just pass in an ID, and we can pass in a name, we can pass in the score, which is going to be 0 by default. So why didn't we have values here? Because like we have the ID and name as keys here, we can just pass it like that and it will just understand. The next thing we need to do is we need to actually tell the entire room that this person has joined. So like imagine if I join your lobby, I want the entire server, like I want the entire lobby to know that I have joined, right? Or else everyone will be out of sync and you won't see the scores for a player. You won't even recognize that a player has joined, but somehow you will not be on the top of the leaderboard, and that would suck, right? So so we need to actually push this event to everyone. So we are going to not use the socket, because remember, socket represents the user. So I'm going to use the names. So like socket can be any name. Here I'm referring to socket variable. Socket refers to the user, IO refers to everyone. So you can do IO 2, and we have to like to send this event to a specific game ID, not to every single game in the server. So this dot game ID, so this will only send it to this game, and we want to emit an event. And now the syntax is pretty much same. So we are going to emit player joined, and we are going to emit an object here. We are going to have ID, name, and score should be default 0, so that the front ends are up to date. Now there are a few more things I want to emit. So like we want the actual user who joined. We want to let them know all the people who are in the game currently, right? There's no way for us to do that right now. So we are going to do socket.emit players. This will keep the current joining player sync with all of the other players. So this dot players. Perfect. And the other thing we want to do is we want to emit who is the game host, so that like the front end can decide if we want to show the button or not. So socket.emit, we are going to emit new host. I'm using the new host because we will be using this event a lot of different places. The purpose of this event in the front end is like just to update the host. So We are just going to have one listener in the front end for this event, and whenever we want to change the host, we are going to use the new host event. Now what we are going to do is we are going to do this dot setup listeners. Like once we have joined the game, we want to set up the listeners. So this dot setup listeners socket. Now we can go ahead and set up our listeners here. Before we even set the listeners, I want to go ahead and complete the setup listeners file so that we can go ahead and focus on what really matters, which is the game class itself. We will just make sure everything is fine here, and then we'll go ahead with that. Alright, so we talked about how before we are checking if the game is existing or not. So if the game is existing, we simply want to join the player. So how do we do it? So we already have the game instance here. So we are just going to say game.joinPlayer, and we are just going to pass in the details. The first thing we need is the ID, which is going to be the socket.id. The next thing we need is the name, and the third thing we need is the actual socket, which represents the user. That's it. We don't need to do anything else. And in the else block, we need to actually create the game because the game does not already exist. So to create a new game, we are just going to use how classes work. So const game is equal to new game, and we are going to pass in a few stuff like room ID, IO, and we are just going to pass in socket.id as host so that the person is host at first. Alrighty, and now what we are going to do is we are going to do rooms.set. We are going to do a room ID, and we are passing the game instance. So what we are doing is we are adding a new entry to the rooms map, and we are specifying the room ID, and we are associating the game object to it so that we can access it later, or we actually have a track of it so that whenever somebody tries to join this game, we can actually identify this specific object and we can direct them to join this game. I hope you're understanding how the flow is going right now. The next thing we need to do is pretty easy. The same thing we did before. So game dot join player, and we are going to pass in socket ID, name, and socket. That's easy. Now our setup listeners thing is done here, and now our main listeners should work. What we need to worry about now is the listeners in our game class. So now we need to, our entire logic resides here. Basically, you can split it up into files, but I really do not want to do that. I want to have everything here because this is not a tutorial on how to manage your files correctly. I do not want to confuse you guys a lot. So in the setup listeners function, the first thing we need, there are a lot of different things here. The first event we will be listening is the start game. So socket.on, we are going to see if any person emits the start game event, which only the host can do, by the way. So we need to do some checks. I'm going to use an async function here. Usually we do not use async functions in this app which we are making right now. So the reason we are using async function is because we need to do a API call to get a paragraph. So we will get into that later, but first of all, right now we are going to work on this. So first of all, we are going to check if the game is already running or not. So if a game is running, you cannot run a game again. So at the same time. So this, hold on. So if this dot game status is equal to in progress. So if it's in progress right now, we want to return socket dot, not this socket dot emit error, and we want to say the game has already started. Perfect. And I think there is one more check we need to do. Yep. The second check we need to do is if the person sending this event is a host or not. So imagine if you are not a host, and if you find out a way to send this event, if you don't have proper checks in place, anyone can start the game. So the game host basically has no meaning. So we need to actually check if the person who is sending this event is the host or not. So if this dot game host is not equal to socket.id, so if the socket.id is not the game host, then we are gonna do return socket.emit. We are gonna pass in an error event, and we are gonna send you are not the host of the game. Only the host can start the game. Whatever, I don't even care. Anyways, now first thing we need to do is we need to consider that this function, like the start game event, can also be done when the game ends. So what happens when the game ends? Like we saw, we have a leaderboard, right? The leaderboard gets retained when the game ends. What we want to do whenever the game starts, we need to actually reset the leaderboard to 0. So how do we do that? So we are going to do for, since we're using async commit, we need to use this one version. You could use promises and stuff with like for each, all of that stuff, but I'm just going to go easy way. I'm just going to use for here. So don't be ever afraid of like embarrassed of using for. So const player of this dot players, and for every player I want to set player dot score is equal to 0. So like for every player I want to set the score to 0. And now what I want to do is like I want to emit the score to player, like I want to emit the changes to our clients. So how do we do that? We actually already emitted this event first, like the player one. We are going to reuse this emit event. So except I'm not going to send it to just this person. We are going to send it to every single one in the lobby. So we are going to do this dot io dot to this dot game id, not game host, game id, and we are going to emit players, and we are going to say this dot players. Now this will emit all the players and their updated scores to the clients, all of the clients in the room. And once this is done, we are good to start with the game. We are going to do this dot game status is equal to in progress. And now we can start with the paragraph generation and stuff. So what we want to do is I want to create a new file. I know I just said that we are not going to create a lot of files, but only one file we need. And that's because I want to separate the API logic somewhere else in a somewhere different function. So I'm going to create a new folder here. I'm going to call it utils, and I'm going to create a new file called as generate paragraph.ts. Now there is one thing I want to do. I don't want to write because this is a very long stuff. You can go to my GitHub and copy this, but I'm going to use this entire thing here. So let me tell you what this means. So this string is a local string, so I saved it here. Why did I do that? Because sometimes API requests can fail and we still want to return something. So what is the string? I copied lorem ipsum and I translated it to English, and this is that. So we have a function called as generate paragraph using lorem ipsum, which just splits all of these. It just picks like random 50 stuff. I think we should change it to like 150. So like yeah, so it will pick up 150 words randomly. It will shuffle them, and like it will just create a paragraph out of it. And here what we are going to do is in generate paragraph function, which we'll be actually using, we are making a fetch call to this URL. So you could go to this URL and you will see a fake paragraph which will be generated, which will have actually good letters. Like this is not actually translated properly. That's why I'm using this API. So if there is no response, like if the response has any errors, we are going to throw an error, and we will look at the error handling later. But if we have a response, we are going to convert it to text, and we are going to split all the new lines into spaces, and we are going to return the paragraph back to our flow. If there is an error, so we threw an error here. So like if there is an error, we are gonna generate the paragraph using lorem ipsum, and then we are going to return the paragraph. So if the API doesn't work, we have a backup, and that's technically how things should work. You can simply copy this file from my GitHub repository if you like are too lazy to just type this. I understand, I was even too lazy. That's why I used the API in the first place. Anyways, back to the game.ts file. Now we can go ahead and we can actually work on the paragraph emitting. So how do we do that? We set the game status. Now we can do const paragraph is equal to await generate paragraph. The reason we are using await here is because this is an async function. The generate paragraph function is an async function. And now, yeah, we will have the paragraph. So like even if there is error or not, we will have the paragraph. We don't need to worry about it. The next thing we need to do is we need to set this dot paragraph to paragraph, so that our class keeps track of the paragraph. Now we need to send this paragraph to every single person in the lobby. So we're going to do this dot io dot to this dot game id, just like we did before, and we're going to emit a game started event, and we're going to pass in the paragraph here. So the game started event will recognize that the game has been started, and it will contain the paragraph, which will be given to all people at the same time, and they can start typing at this point. Now what I want to do is, there's still one more thing left, is I want to set a timer. So I want to have I want to give everybody 60 seconds to do the typing stuff. So I'm going to do set timeout. So there might be a better way of doing this, but I think this is by far the simplest way. So this is going to run a function, and I want this to be 60,000 milliseconds, which is basically 60 seconds, which is 1 minute. And after 1 minute is over, what I want to do is I want to do this.game status is equal to finished. The next thing I want to do is this.io.to this.game ID, and I want to emit an event here which says game finished. Now there might be a case where people might get disconnected and stuff, and I still it's a very unlikely case, but I still want to keep every single client in sync. So I'm gonna send all the players and their updated leaderboards when the game ends. So yeah, emit. I'm just gonna say players again, and I'm just gonna pass in this dot players. So even after the game ends, we will still send the players back as a last resort to sync everything on every single client. So yeah. Now this event is done. I think how many events? We still have 3 more events, out of which only one is very significant. So I think we are done with the core part. We are able to start a game. We are able to finish it using the timeout. All we need now is to manage the keystrokes of the user. We are going to track the keystrokes, and we are going to see how many words the person has actually typed. We are going to compare it with the paragraph, and we are going to set the scores on the server side. Why on the server side? Because anybody can manipulate the client side. So we are going to do that on the server side. It might be expensive a little, but I think this is the best way. So we have set one listener here, so which is socket.on start game. We do not need to nest listeners here. We can simply create a new listener here. So I'm just going to do, this is going to track the keystrokes. Whenever we get any keystrokes from the client, we are going to send an event, and we are going to track it here. So socket.on player typed. So whenever player types, we will get this event, and then we are going to have the entire paragraph which the person typed. So it's going to be typed string. So this is going to have what the person typed, and now we can work on this. So we are, first of all, we're going to check this, if this dot game status is not equal to in progress, then we are going to do return socket. Oops, I accidentally socket dot emit error, and we are going to pass in the game has not started yet. So the reason I'm doing this, because if we do not have this check, the client side person can actually do some stuff, and they can basically send WebSocket events of player typed, and even if the game is ended, they can still update the scores. So we don't want that. So we are just going to check if the game is in progress or not. So what we want to do is we want to split the paragraph into words, and we are going to check everything. So what we are going to do is I'm going to copy this code actually. You know what? Yeah. So basically what this code is doing is we are splitting the paragraph we have in the class. Then we are splitting the paragraph which the user has provided us. We are setting the score to 0. And what we are doing is we are running a for loop. We are doing we are checking if every word matches the thing or not. If there is any word that doesn't matches, we are going to break the loop, and that's the score. That's where the score ends. Even if you mistype a word and start typing the correct words later, you still won't get any scores because you mistype one word there. So that's the logic for this. And if every word is correct, if you have consecutive words correct, you will get score ++. So this will add up your score. So each time you type, this logic will be run. So you can optimize this by either detecting where a word is typed on the front end, but it's writing double logic on both sides, and I don't want to do that. You can do it, of course, if you want to. Again, as I said, I want to do some stuff in this project and not rely on me to just give you project as handover. You need to do actual something like that. Add some changes, quality of life changes. Like if you put this in your resume, you're not gonna get accepted because this is actually on YouTube, right? So yeah. So now we are gonna update the players. So in our class, now we have the score. So const player is equal to this dot players dot find. We're gonna check if the player dot id is equal to socket out id. If we found a match, that's the player we want to edit, and then we can do then we need to do some TypeScript checks. So if like player exists, we need to basically do player dot score is equal to score. And now what we can do is like we can go ahead and do this dot io dot to, and we can say this dot game id dot emit player score id socket dot id and score. Yeah, we are emitting this to every single person in the room so that every single person stays up to date about the latest course. So like if they're typing, they go do try hard modes, they see at the side, they see, oh, somebody else has passed me on the leaderboard, now I'm just gonna speed up my typing. So that's how this is gonna work. So there are two things we need. First of all, there are two more events, then we are actually done with the backend part of this application, then we can finally go to the front end. So one thing which we need here is like what happens when a player leaves. So there are going to be two events with basically same functionality. So like we are going to have socket.on leave. So this is going to do some stuff. So like you might think that this is very easy, like just remove the player from the thing, but there's a catch. What if the person leaving is a game host? Like you don't want to end this game right there, of course. And you also do not want to leave the player stranded. So like nobody can start a game. You actually want to transfer the host to somebody else. How do we do that? First of all, we are going to do if socket.id is equal to game host. So if the person is a game host, then we are going to do this logic. If not, if the person is not a game host, so this dot game host actually, if the person is not a game host, we are going to first make sure this works. So socket dot leave, we are going to make him leave the room. So this dot game id, and this we are going to remove it from our player stuff. So I'm just going to copy this thing. It's like same stuff again and again. Yep. Now it says this dot players is equal to this dot players dot filter. Player is, yeah, we are just like removing the person from the players array, and we are filtering him out. So we are checking like what is the condition that needs to happen in order to not remove that person. So like as long as the player id is not equal to socket id, don't remove that person. As long as it's equal, remove that person. So we are removing that player id from our array. Then we are emitting to the entire room that hey, this player left, remove it from your client leaderboards. Now in this, what we're going to do, if the person is a game host, we need to do a little more logic. What we are going to do is first we are going to remove the person. And why we are going to do this? Because we actually need to set the game host. So we are going to do if now that the player list is has gotten rid of the host, we can actually easily set a new game host. So we can do if this dot players dot length is not equal to 0. There's also a possibility that the person is a game host, but there's nobody in the lobby. So like if there is nobody in the lobby, so which in the else case, so if there is nobody in the lobby, what we wanna do is we wanna do rooms, which we got to import. So yeah, I was correct. We need this to be export, and we need to actually import it here. Rooms dot remove, rooms dot delete actually, and we are going to delete this dot game id. So this will basically remove the association of the game id with this specific game, and this game will be lost in the void and probably not even exist. So yeah, and if there are people other than the host in the room, what we're gonna do is we wanna change the host. So this dot game host is equal to this this is not a minus, this should be equal to this dot players 0. We want the first player out of the array because we already removed the host, right? So yeah, dot id. The reason I removed the host, there might be some cases where the like the person on the 0 index might not like be the host. It might be on like the host might be on the like 2 or 3. I know it might be impossible in this case, but I still want to make sure. So that's why I just remove the host before. It's not that we are emitting anyone before the person is leaving. So yeah, we are emitting events as our wish goes. So now we are going to emit 2 events. We already have used these events, so I'm just going to paste them right here. The first is the new host, which is going to be the actual new host which we are setting here. The second event is player left, which we have already used before. Now what we are going to do is we are going to use the socket event again, the same content. You can actually extract this and have a different function, but I'm just going to leave it for you. And instead of leave, we want to have disconnect, which is actually a socket.io default. So like if somebody disconnects off your game, they will be removed from the game from our server side. So we have the ability to do that. So yeah, I think our entire backend should be done right now. Yeah, it's pretty much done. Yeah, now we can move to the front end part, and we can listen to all the things that the server is emitting, like the player score, new host, player left, player joined, and stuff like game status, like game started, game finished, like whatever stuff. So we are gonna see all of that, and yeah, let's get started with the front end. If you are sticking till here, I want you to leave a comment, because I want to see if anyone sticks till here, because this is going to be a very long video, to be completely honest. So if you are watching till now, huge respect to you. You are actually here to learn something new. So go ahead, leave that in the comments below. I would really appreciate it. So let's get started with the front end. All right, it's time to add a new project to a monorepo, which is going to be the client. So we are going to create a Next.js application. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this server. You know what? I'm going to keep it running for now. And I'm going to create a new tab here. This will be the place where we can just go and install packages and stuff. So in app, we want to install a new Next.js application. So we are going to use pnpx create next app, and I'm going to call it client, or like yeah, you can even call it web. I called it web in my project. So the reason I deleted web is because it's actually a demo built for the monorepo. So I want to just create a blank Next.js application. It's just personal opinion, but you can just proceed with that one also. It doesn't matter. So I'm just gonna hit enter. One of the reason is like we get the options here. I just want to make sure that everything is the options we need. So we are going to use TypeScript. We are going to use ESLint, Tailwind yes, SRC no. We are going to use app router. We do not want to customize the import alias. This should not take a lot of time. And after this is done, we actually will integrate Shadcn-ui, which will allow us to do a lot of different stuff, like using dark mode and stuff. And you can basically have like components like buttons and stuff, which we are going to use a lot in this build. So yeah, this is done. Let's go to shadcn-ui.com. So shadcn, okay, ui.shadcn.com. Perfect. Let's do get started. Very good thing. This is like a, I don't even know, this is not even a library. Like it's like you need to copy paste components into your projects, and you have a CLI to do that also. Like I have a video on Shadcn-ui. If you want to learn more about it, I think you should, because it's a very good thing. I will leave the link in the description below so that you can always watch the video. But I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but let's go to installation, and we are using Next.js. So let's choose that. We already have the Next.js project. We are going to use this command to init our project. So I'm going to copy the pnpm command. Let's go to terminal, and I'm going to clear this. I'm going to paste this command. Let's wait. Should not take a lot of time. And there is a problem here. Yes, I like how it detects that there is no package.js file, it's just a bots. Okay, we are in the apps folder. We aren't even in the Next.js folder. We need to install Shadcn-ui in the web folder, right? Now we can just paste this here. Now it will, and now it should work. So let's wait for this to be done. It will actually, we are going to use the default styling, and we are going to use Slate. You just feel free to go with whatever you want. And we are going to use CSS variable yes, because it's very easy to customize. If you want to know more, we have things in our YouTube channel. We have a video on Shadcn-ui, again, shameless plug. But yeah, it detected all of our configuration of a Next.js application, and it just finished the initialization. Now you may add components. Now there are 2 components that we need. We will before that we need to actually configure dark mode. I absolutely forgot about it like a champ. So let's have dark mode, and let's for Next.js. Now we need to install a package called Next theme. So we are just gonna paste the command here and just forget about it. Let's go back. It says create a theme provider. So go into the components folder and create a theme provider.tsx file and have the content. So I'm just gonna listen to it. So that it is done, like installing the stuff. We actually need to restart this so that our Next.js application run as well. Yeah, it is perfect. Our Next.js application is working. But yeah, let's go back to a dark mode thing. Now what happens is like if you go to web, Shadcn-ui has already created a folder called as components for us, and here we can create a new theme provider.tsx file here, and we can paste the contents. Just forget about it. Just Shadcn do its thing. Wrap your root layout. So I'm just gonna copy this component. We are gonna need to go to app/layout.tsx. So let's go to app/layout.tsx, and we are gonna have in the body. Actually, I'm gonna have this pasted. Oops, not this one. Copy, paste. Yep. And here we are gonna close the theme provider. And we need to actually import it from our values in Shadcn-ui. There are a lot of confusion here. You need to import from the components folder, not from the Next themes. So yeah, default theme I want to keep it to dark. Like if you keep it to system, you actually need to place a dark mode toggle, or it will become only light mode, or it will not even respect your dark mode. So I just want to keep it to dark mode. I don't want to deal with all of the stuff which is not relevant to this tutorial. Anyways, so yeah, add a mode toggle. If you want to do that, feel free to do so, but you need to set this to system. And yeah, perfect. You do not need to, but I think it's the best one to have. But now you do have everything you need. I think we need some components here, so we are going to install a few ones. So first of all, we need a card component. So let's go to alphabetical order. First we need the button component, which we are going to use. So to add a button component, this is the command I'm going to copy for pnpm. This is not going to install any packages more. This is just going to copy the components into a components folder. The next component we need is the card component. So I'm just going to copy this command for pnpm. It says installing button. Should not take a lot of time. Perfect. I'm going to install the card. And I need a sonar as well. So sonar, to show you sonar, I need to move myself up. It's basically a form of toast. So alright, so if I click on show toast, you look at the bottom right part of the screen and you will see this cool sonar toast. So what I want to do with this is I want to display my error messages here. So let me place myself back to where I was. Hi. Alright, anyways, now we need to install sonar. So how do we do that? First of all, we need to we just run this command. And we need to pass in toaster inside our root layout, which is importing from components. So let's just copy the pnpm command. We are going to paste it here. And we actually need to wait for it to install. The sonar actually installs a dependency which is called a sonar. A sonar is not made by Shadcn-ui. I believe it's made by somebody else, and they're actually adding it to our Next.js. So yeah. Now if you go to UI, do not add anything to UI. It's basically all Shadcn-ui stuff. It's a sonar, button and stuff. But we need to go to layout.tsx and we need to add the toaster here, which is not from sonar but from our own components. Perfect. Don't make a mistake. Always check where you're importing from. It's very important. Alright, now we can go ahead and start working with all the juicy stuff. Alright, so what I want to do right now is I want to speed up the tutorial. We have been using a lot of time. I think you should be knowing the basics of React. You should be knowing how JSX works. This is basically just HTML. If you are watching this video, I am assuming that you know HTML. So I think I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna remove everything inside of the actual thing in the main. And actually I'm just gonna go ahead and copy my stuff. So I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm just copy. We will actually have a look at it, so don't worry just yet. We're gonna paste this here. Okay, so we need to import some stuff. So I'm just gonna import the card. I'm gonna import the button from our Shadcn-ui components. We're gonna we do need to install input. So let's go ahead and let's choose input. Let's install it as well. Oops, pnpm. Let's go to terminal. Let's install it here. Should not take a lot of time. Should be pretty quick with it. Alright, it's done. Now we can auto import it. Okay, now I want to show you the UI. I want to like remove these on submit functions and on click things right now, and I want to show you how this works, and then we can go ahead and with we don't even need the next image thing, we can just remove it. Let's go here and let's go to localhost 3000. It's taking some time, and here's a quick tip. If you want this to load a little faster, like right now I'm recording, and while recording it's very slow. What I would do is I would go to package.json here, and I would add like in front of next dev I'm gonna add next turbo. So turbo uses the like it ditches webpack, and it's like their own bundler thingy. I don't really know a lot of thing about it. So like if you use turbo, it will use its own Rust thing, and if you don't already know, Rust runs faster. It's like a entire thing about Rust. So yeah. Now what we can do is we can just go ahead and restart this, because just we just edited the package.json, so we do need to restart the dev server here. Perfect. Now it does say turbo. Previously I don't think it did. So yeah, now it says turbo. Now it should be slightly faster, if not a lot. I'm gonna refresh this page. It's still taking some time, but it should be a little faster. So this is the UI. It obviously doesn't work right now. Oh, what's happening here? Why is this working? Oh yeah, because we are submitting a form. Yeah, it makes sense. But this should not be the case. We are going to handle it a different way. But this is the thing, like after we are create a game, we want to actually generate a new ID from the front end itself, and we are going to pass it to the WebSocket. And in join game, we are just going to take the invite code, and we are just going to pass the user to the correct game. So we are going to have that by the params, like we are going to pass in the IDs in params so that the user is pointed to the correct game. So we need to do that. So what in this page, what we need to do, we just need to add to the params. So let's do that. The first thing we need to do is we need to actually create game functions. So I'm just going to copy it. It's very simple. That's why I'm just copying it. Plus we do not want to use a lot of time. So okay, so this needs a package. So we need to install a UUID package. Let me tell you what it is. So pnpm install UUID. So this package is used to generate random IDs. So we are going to use this random ID for our invite code. So I'm just gonna do import v4 as UUID v4 from UUID. We actually need to also install types for this. So I'm gonna do pnpm install -d types /UUID. Now this should work as usual. Yeah, perfect. And for router, what we need to do is we need to use the Next.js router. So const router is equal to use router. Now this is very important. Do not use next/router. It's for the pages directory. Use next/navigation for the app directory, which we are using right now. So importing from the right places is key here. So like just import from the right place. Now things should work. So what this function is saying, generate an invite code and push just redirect the user to /game/invite code, and then we will handle the game stuff there. So this page is currently only doing this, which is creating the game, and then we will also actually join the game in a similar way. So on click create game, and for join game we want to actually go ahead and create a new function. So this is going to be a little complicated, not exactly complicated, but we do have a form. We do need to have an on submit here. So whenever someone submits a form, we need to actually have a join game thingy here function, which we are going to create right now. So function, that works. Yeah, but like let's create it anyway. So join game, we want E, which is going to be react.form event. We can just import this. We don't like form event, HTML form event. This is the typing. If you're using JavaScript, you do not need that. But here what we are going to do is, first of all, we are going to do e.prevent default. Thank you, Copilot, but I do not need your help right now. Later, maybe sometime. Then we need const form is equal to new form data, which is going to have the form. Now we will have all the values here. Oops, it appears no, this should be actually e.current target. So e.current target, and now we can have const form data. Yeah, and now we can simply access the invite code. So const invite code. Yeah, thank you, Copilot. Just give me one line by line, don't give me the entire code like that. So if there is no invite code, I wanna invite code, I just don't want to return, I want to actually return toast, which is a function from Sona. So this is the only function from Sona which we need. Dot error, and we just pass in please invite. I think invite code is required, not a valid one, but invite code is required, because if you pass in an invalid invite code, it will just create a new game using invite code. So it's required. So if you use something like a Turbo as an invite code, it will still work. Now we just need to redirect. So yeah, the reason why we use this and not like something like a state to map to the input like traditionally we do is I just wanted to use an uncontrolled form. So like if you don't already know, I have uploaded a video on my Read with a Thava series where we read technical articles, which was related to like using controlled and uncontrolled forms. I think that you should not really create controlled form when it's really not necessary. So yeah, this is the code we need, and I think we are done with this page. So let's test it out. Okay, so use dot only works in client components. So we need to actually make this a client component. So this is currently a server component. So if we use client at top, this becomes a client component. Now things will work. Now if we create game, it will redirect us to this 404. But if you check the URL, there will be an ID. So if we go to join game, not this one actually, we do not need the invite code again and again. If we add something like Athava or Athava1234, and if I click join game, we will have that in the URL. Now what we can do is we can create that route and we can actually handle everything else. So let's do that, and I'm gonna actually speed run through this because we still have a lot of things to do and we already have used a lot of time. So yeah, I'm actually gonna server is already closed. Now in app, actually we want to create a new folder called as game, which is actually going to be a route, and inside game we want to create a new file called as page.tsx. I don't want anybody in like just going into localhost 3000/game. We actually want to param, right? I just don't want anyone to just go to /game and give us no ID. So how are we going to deal with that situation? It's very easy. Since this is server component, we can use a redirect function by next/navigation, and we can just go to slash. No ID provided game. I know my component naming is very bad. Just ignore, just use whatever you want to. But yeah, if we go to now /game, it will redirect us back to this page, just like that. Now we need a page which will handle the IDs which we get in params. So we will create a new folder with game ID, which we will receive as params inside of square brackets, and now we can create a page.tsx. Now if you remember, once we entered the invite code, we had an option to enter a name. This is where we will do that. So alright, so the mechanism we are going to use is like for each game. So like if you noticed in the demo, we still had /game, but we also have name in the search param. So we have like $name is equal to Athava. So if we have a name, we just start the game. If we do not have the name, we actually prompt the user to add a name. And since we do not even need any interactivity in the name form, we are just going to make it a server component, and the actual game is going to be a client component. So this is going to be RFC, and we are going to call this thing game join. And I'm going to copy the JSX, of course, but first of all we need some props. in components, you can just, in server components, you can just do search params, and you can get params, and we need to actually give types to these. So search params is supposed to be don't trust Copilot on this one. Params, this is supposed to be an object, and we only need the name here, and which is supposed to be optional because we do not know if we have the name yet or not. And params, we do know that we have a param which is game ID, and that's why we are on this page, so we are not going to use optional. So string, that's a little logical thinking you need. So yeah, and now we need a little JSX, but first of all we need to see if we have a name or not. So we're going to remove this. Hear me out. We're going to remove this, and we're going to say if search params dot name, if we do not have a name, we are going to return a piece of JSX, and if we do have, we are going to return some other piece of JSX. That's very easy. So I'm going to copy this entire thing. I'm not going to use a lot of time, to be completely honest. I'm just going to paste this here. We need to import card, of course. So import card. You need to have a append server. So since this is a form action, we cannot use like functions, client-side functions here. We need to create server-side functions, which is called as server actions in Next.js. So yeah, we can create a new server action here, which is going to be empty for now. So async function, server actions need to be async. So async function. I already have a video on server action, so if you wanna just go and watch it, I'll leave it in the description. Append name, and I'm gonna have the form data, and this is going to be a form data. You do not really need a server action. You could just make this a client component if you want to, but if you want a server action, you need to have the use server directive inside the function itself. Now you need to import, and you need to import button itself. Perfect. Now if we go ahead and create a game, we should be here, which says enter your name. We should be prompted to enter a name, and join game, we should have a name appended, but we don't have anything in the logic here. We need to add something. So yeah, we are just gonna use the form data. So we already have the form data here, so we can simply access the values. So const name is equal to, yeah, and we can just do, if there's no name, we just return, we just do nothing. But if we have a name, we redirect from next navigation, of course. Yeah, just like this. We just /game /params.game ID question mark name, and we just append the name as the URL search parameters. Now if we save this, if we go here, if we put name as a server, if we click on join game, you should see that we have a name here, and the component has disappeared. Why? Because now we have a search param with a name, and we are not rendering this JSX. Instead, we are rendering this part of JSX, which is going to be a component. So we are going to create a new component here called as game.tsx, which is going to be the entire game basically. And RFC, let's do RFC. This is going to be a game, and we do not need the React import. We are going to go back to our thingy, and we are going to render this component. So game. We of course need some props, but I do want to see if this is working. So yeah, now the game component is being rendered. What we can do is we can make the game component itself a client component, so that we do not need to, like, we have isolated this enough, so we can just make this client component and do all of the things we want to, crazy stuff we want to do here. So it's a client component, it's still rendering, good sign. If we remove the name, let's see if it works or not. Yep, enter your name, Athava, join game, perfect. Now we can go ahead and work on the actual game, and we need some props here. So let me see what props do we need. Alright, we only need game ID and name. Everything else will be handled by our WebSockets and servers, so we do not need to worry about everything a lot. So we need to actually first create a new types folder, so that we can keep track of all the types which we are creating. So in web, I will create a new folder called as types. You can simply create a types file instead, and I'm gonna have like a types.d.ts. d.ts because we only have types in this folder, so that's why I just have like this one. I'm gonna have all of the types here, so that we will not create a lot of them, a lot more. So like the first type is a player, which is going to have ID, name, and score. If the server also has the same So like whenever the server is sending the players event, we are actually sending in the same format. So I already have it here so that it helps us knowing what a player is expecting. In player score, like whenever the score is being updated, we are getting the ID and the score. In the game status, we already know. And the game props is basically the component props. So yeah, we are actually getting the game props. So I'm gonna have things from game props here. And we actually will have type here because that's how it's supposed to be done. And we are going to have game ID and name. So yeah, now we can go ahead and initiate our WebSocket, and then we can listen to the events that our server sends, and then we can emit our events as we create the UI. But first of all, I want to listen to all the events that the server is sending, and I want to manage all the states according to that, and then we will step into the UI part of things. Alright mates, it's time to speedrun. So there are going to be a few states. I'm not going to type it all. You can go ahead and pause this video because it's going to just stretch this video to like a different level. So I just want to paste this here. Basically we are just going to have use states. I'm just going to import it. We need socket from socket.io client. We need to actually install the socket.io client. We did everything and we didn't install the socket.io client. So let's do pnpm install socket.io -client. So this is the package for the client. So I'm going to install it. The types come with it, so we do not need to install it. Now we can import it from socket.io, I believe. Can we? Hello? Are we able to import it? Let me do restart TS server. Alright, now let me import. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. And now we can import the player from types. We can import the game status from types. Okay, so now let's look at everything. So first of all, we are storing the IO instance in the state. Don't ask why, because I think that's the best way to store. Players, we are setting in the state because whenever they are updating, we need to update the UI as well. That's why. Game status, we need to have the state. The paragraph which is being sent by the server needs to be in the state. The host of the session needs to be in the state. So like whenever the host changes, if you become the new host, you need to have that button. So yeah, we have already discussed about that. So if the input, like an input paragraph is basically is going to control an input, so this is the only controlled input we are going to use in this tutorial. So this is going to keep track of what the user types, and as the user types, we are going to send it to the server itself. So yeah, now we actually need to connect to the WebSocket. How do we do that? We do know that our WebSocket is hosted on it's hosted on localhost 8080. So we could directly hardcode it, or we could create an environment variable, right? So I'm just gonna go to web. I'm gonna create a new file which is called as, hold on, there's some error here. Yeah, we need to pass in props. So game ID, let's do that. I'm sorry, let's just do this first. So I think it was from params.gameid, and we can just pass in what else does it need? Yeah, it needs name. So search params.name. Perfect. Now we need to set the environment variable. Let's go to web and create a new file called as .env.local. This is already this is not going to be pushed. So like if you are deploying somewhere, you might need to mention your environment variables to them. And we are going to have next public WebSocket URL, and it's going to be HTTP localhost 8080. I know you might be thinking, why are we using HTTP for a WebSocket? Socket.io handles it very in a very good way. You can have WS, it's fine. Like, so we are only using like WebSocket, but you could also use something called as polling. So if like WebSocket is not available, you can use the polling, and that's why we are using HTTP. But I think for debugging purposes, I think WebSocket is the best because you can see all the messages in one place. And and sometimes messages go through polling and they always go unnoticed, and I think this is the best way. Now let's initiate a WebSocket connection. When do we want to initiate a WebSocket connection? As soon as the page loads, right? So we are going to use a use effect, and this will only run once when the page is loaded. And we are going to have the dependency arrow as nothing, so that it only runs once. The first thing we need is like the socket. We are going to create a socket. So cons socket is equal to IO We need it from socket.io client, and now we can just pass in process.env.next public websocket URL as string. And now what we're going to do is you can leave it here. Leaving it here means that polling will also work. We want to set it so it only works with WebSocket. You can skip this part if you want to, but I think it works way better while debugging. So yeah, we can have like a transports, and we can just pass in WebSockets. If you leave this alone, it will also work with polling. So yeah, so we are going to set the IO instance to socket, so our states have track of it. Now what we're going to do is we are going to do socket.emit, and we are going to do join game, and we are going to have ID and name, and we are going to create listeners. But the thing is, okay, let's forget about it. But what we need to do is, like, whenever the component gets unmount, we actually need to disconnect the socket. So you need to actually return a function that does socket.disconnect. This is very important. If you don't do it, you might see a lot of socket connections created for a single page. So use this. This is very, very important. I'm repeating, this is very important. Do not miss this. All right. So we need a function to set up listeners. But when do we want to set up listeners? When the socket is connected, right? So how do we do that? Hold on. So we can do simply, we can use an if use effect. We can have a setup listeners function, and we can have a remove listeners function. So we need to create both of them. So function setup listeners, and one is going to be remove listeners. So function remove listeners. And what I want to do is I want to yeah, so like what's happening is, like, we are setting up listeners, and once the component gets unmounted, we want to remove the listeners. I also want to do it here as well. So like when the socket disconnects, we also want to remove the listeners. Socket hold on, we just use the remove listeners. I'm sorry, it's been a very long time since I'm recording right now, and my head is going all the way. Okay, so in setup listeners, we are going to have a lot of different things, but what I want to do is, like, okay, let's not worry about it right now, but let's start creating our listeners. Okay, first thing I want to do, if I want to see if the IO instance exists or not. So if IO instance doesn't exist, we are gonna just do nothing. We do not want to set a listener. We do not want to get undefined errors. So yeah, IO instance dot on. So this is a default for client. So connect is a default for client, and connection is the default for server. This is very weird, I know. I don't know why this is set this way, but we need to follow what's made. And we can do console.log connected to server. Basically this is like just for that. You don't need to nest listeners in the client side. Now you can work on like the listener which says like getting players. Like let's work on the players event first, which gives us all the players. So IO instance, hold on, I'm just gonna copy it. Alrighty, it says IO instance dot on players. We get the players, so you can have like a, okay, let's go back to our server. I want to show you this, like how the params thing works. So if you go to classes, let's check the any players thing. So like if wherever we place any players, we are sending this dot players directly, right? We are sending an array with the ID, score, and name, which apparently matches the type here. So in game.tsx, it matches the type. So the thing you send in the argument, you can get as an argument as a function. It's that easy. It does all the hard work behind the scenes. You can simply do it like this. I like this very much about Socket.io. So yeah, you get all the players and you just set it to your state, and your state can render the UI as needed. Then we need a player joined. So like if a new player joins inside the lobby you are in right now, then this will execute. It will take the previous state of players and it will add the new player into your state. For player left, we want to implement something like this. These are very simple stuff. All you need to do is manipulate with state. So player left, we are just filtering out the player out of the array and updating the state. And player score, so like if we get a player score event, so like if score of any player updates, what we want to do is Yeah, we need to import the type first. So like what we are getting is like we are getting the players, we are looping the players, and we are seeing if the player ID is equal to the ID which the WebSocket is mentioning. If the match is found, we are updating the score, and yeah, we're just returning the player, and we are updating the state. So whenever we get a player score event, we are basically updating the score for that specific player which the WebSocket is telling us. So yeah, that's how it is working. We still need more events here. So we need game started, game finished. So the game started event basically does this. Game started event takes the paragraph, and we are setting the paragraph in the state, and we are just setting game status as in progress. And next we need is the game finished listener. We have worked on listeners so many times as a server, so I don't want to use a lot of time just typing it out myself. I hope you really understand, because this should not take a lot of time. So yeah, if you want, you can even go and copy from my GitHub repository. I'm just saying that. But if you are a beginner, like very beginner, I would still recommend like typing it out yourself. I think I'm very experienced, and since this is a YouTube video, I don't want it to go long. That's why I'm doing this. I think we need only 2 more listeners, so I'm just gonna copy those. Okay, I forgot to explain the game finished one. We are just setting the state as finished, and we are setting the input paragraph as empty, so that like we are resetting the input box of the user, so that they are prepared for the next game. All right, so io instance dot on new host, like whenever we get a new host, we are changing the current host according to the client, and we are setting it in the state. And then we have io instance dot on error. We are just toast.erroring that message. So like I showed you the sonal thing, right? So like whenever we get an error from the server, we are displaying it in a beautiful toast. So yeah, that's basically what we are doing. We need a few more functions here, which is like remove listeners function. So yeah, this function is going to basically remove all the listeners. So it's going to do io_instance.off, and we are just going to pass in the event name for all the events we created before, like listeners we created before. So like when the component unmounts, we want to remove all the event listeners as well, so that there's no performance issues and stuff. All right, so we need something like we need a start game function, which we are going to eventually map to a button. It's just going to check if the WebSocket is connected or not. If not, it's just not going to do anything. If it's connected, we are going to emit the event called as start game. And yeah, it is going to check if like the server is like we worked on a server, right? It's going to check if the current person is host or not. If not, it's not going to let us do it. All right, so the next thing we need, it's nitpicking. It's not really you need it, but I think it makes things a lot easier. So like when somebody tries to close the tab, we want to actually leave that specific room, so that what happens if you don't have this is like if you close the tab away, the players do not get updated suddenly. So like it takes like a couple of minutes for the players to get updated and for the player to disappear from the leaderboards. But if you actually leave the room before you close the tab, so like this says that before closing tab, leave the room. So like if you leave the room before, that will be like the leaderboard will be updated instantly for everyone else. So I think this is a good quality of life thing. And now we will work on the actual UI part, which is here. It is going to be a little complicated, so we are going to work a little bit on it. So first of all, we are going to have a div. So I'm just going to copy step by step. So this is going to be a div, parent div, which is going to have a width of screen, padding of 10. We are going to use grid, and this is responsive by default, so that's why we are using Tailwind responsiveness here. Here what we want to do is I'm just going to copy the leaderboard because it's pretty straightforward code and it does not need a lot of things. But before we do that, we need to create a component called as leaderboard card, because if you know, like there can be many people in the leaderboard, right? So we need to create a card for each of them. Instead of like creating all of the nesting stuff here, we actually should create a new component. So instead of the components folder, I'm going to create a new leaderboard card component .tsx. This is going to be pretty straightforward, just a little bit of styling stuff. So I'm just going to copy this and just pasting this. So we are just getting the player and the rank from the actual as props. The player is going to from the player type, so that we have all the access to the player name and the player score, and then we are getting the rank, and we are just displaying the rank here. And this is basically all the styling. We are using the card from Shadcn-ui. Now we can save this and we can go back and we can start working here. So hold on, so where is my file? Alrighty, so what I want to do here is first of all, okay, this is going to be the leaderboard part. So this is very straightforward. I have the comment here. So what we are doing here is that we are sorting the players, like we are taking them and we are sorting them with the scores. Like we want the one with the most score to be on the top, right? So we are sorting that array in that way, and then we are mapping it, we are looping it, and we are rendering a leaderboard card for each of them. And for the rank, what we are doing is we are using the index. So like we already know that the person on 0th index will have the most score. So like we are just and we don't have rank 0, right? So we're just gonna add 1 to it. So like the index 0 will be rank 1, and so on. So like if there is some person with index 3, the rank will be 4, because array start with 0, people do not start with 0. All right, so the leaderboard stuff is done. Now we need to actually work on the game, and there is a few things we need to work on here. We do need an actual container, which is going to be same for all of the cases we are going to create, which is like basically working with the grid columns. Now what we want to do is we want to check some cases. So I want to like copy paste codes in very modular way. So like hold on, so let me import the button. Yeah, so what we're doing is like we're checking if the game status is not started. If the game has not started yet, we want to render this UI, waiting for player to join. And if the current host is us, like if the io_instance.id means that the current WebSocket connections ID, if we are host, we want to display this button. And we are using the start game function, which we just created above, which just emits the start game event to the server. So if only we are host, we are gonna render it. If we are not the host, we are not gonna render it. So this is the logic for like if the game has not started. For the game in progress, we are gonna have this one. So I'm just gonna copy this one and we're gonna paste it. I'm sorry for the copy pasting. I think that we should not be doing a lot of this typing and stuff. It's already taking a lot of time, and I think if you take a pause and look at the code, you will understand it properly. We also need text area, so let's install text area from here. So let's go to text area, let's install it. You can use the HTML text area as well, it's fine, but I just want to like to use Shadcn. So yeah, let's install it. All right, now we can just import the text area and we can save this file so that everything gets formatted. In progress, if the game is in progress, there is a lot of things we are doing, to be completely honest, and it doesn't really look that good as well. Like it is very CSS hacky thingy. So like what we are doing, so like first of all, we have a typo paragraph below, which is pretty simple. Now this is the part which will be a little confusing. So if you saw the demo, we had a text box where we typed things. So like it wasn't a placeholder, right? So if you type something, the thing in the background remained. So like you knew what you had to type in that specific place. And you cannot achieve that with placeholders, because if you type something, the placeholder disappears. So how do you achieve this kind of behavior? What you can have is you can have a p tag with a paragraph inside it, and you can make it, you can make the parent as relative. You can have this here. And what you can do is you can lay a text area over that text, and you can set the opacity. So what will happen is that you can see the text, but you can also see the text area on it, exactly on it. And you will also see the text under that, since you have the opacity as low. So what we are doing, we have a P, we are just rendering the paragraph as usual. So for text area, what you are doing, we have the same thing. So like we have the we have the text 5XL for large, text 2XL for small. We have the padding 5, which is small, and then we are setting it to absolute, which means that we want to break free of the normal rendering, and we want to actually go and display our element as like we want to control the element's position manually. We don't want to adhere to rules anymore. So what we are doing is we are exactly positioning it around the paragraph. So like if the paragraph is this long, let's look at the hand. So if the paragraph is this long, the text box will be this long. If the paragraph is this long, the text box will be this long. So this is just mentioning this. Z index 10 means that the input box needs to be above the paragraph itself so that the person actually click and type. Opacity 75, since we need to reduce the opacity, because if like we have opacity 100, then we will not able to see the paragraph behind the text box. That's why we are doing this. And of course this will be disabled if the game is not in progress, or if the socket is not available right now. So yeah, this was a little complicated, but I would really like if you like play around with the CSS here and try to make it a little better. This is a really janky code right now, to be completely honest. This might work, this might not work, but I think for a tutorial purpose this serves a lot of education. So I think go ahead and make sure you do something flashy here and just make something great. So we have one last part of the code. I hope this is the last part of the code, because I've been doing this for a very long time. All right, so if the game state is finished, we are just going to say game finished. And if we are the host, we are going to say restart the game fresh. If we are not the host, we are just going to say game finished. If we are the host, we are going to see the start game button again. That's it. So yeah, this is our game. Now we should be able to play the game. If we go to our thing, we are already here, right? Like remember we had like the 404 thing and we just left it here. We have already started a game, but I don't want to go here. I want to go to the entire flow. Let's try it out everything. I'm going to create a new game. I'm going to enter my name as Atharva. Waiting for players to join. Start game. We are the host here. So if I just copy the ID, this is the ID we need. If we go here and if we go to localhost 3000, if we paste the invite code and join the game, if we noob master, okay, I just deleted it, but okay, noob. Alright, what's wrong? I think the server restarted or something. Okay, let me try something again. What's wrong here? Okay, so something definitely seems wrong here. It does not. I think something definitely should be wrong on the server side. Alright, this stupid mistake. Look at this. We are listening for players event. We are not listening for player event. We need to change this to players. See how one simple typo can mess you up so bad. Okay, let's go ahead and we restarted the server, so we need to refresh this. If we refresh this, we should have Atharva here. We are not the host here. Noob is not the host. We are not seeing the button, but Atharva is the host and we are seeing the button here. So I'm just going to go and start the game. I'm going to say before here. I'm just going to complete one word. And it's not taking the word for some reason. And we need to fix that as well. Oh yeah, that's because we didn't even make the logic in our game.tsx file. I thought that this front end was over, but we didn't create a logic to actually send the keystrokes to the server, right? The server doesn't even know that you are typing right now. So how do you send the keystrokes? It's a very simple code. It's the use effect actually. You can do many different ways, but I chose it to do it in a use effect manner. So this is the use effect code. So I had a comment here. So what you can do is you can first of all check. So this use effect is run whenever input paragraph change. When will input paragraph change? Whenever somebody types something into text box. So that time this state will change and this use effect will run again. So we are checking if the socket exists or not. If it does not exist, we are going to return, and we are also going to check if the game is in progress or not. If it's in progress, we are going to just return. We are not going to do anything. And if everything is all right, we are just going to do io_instance.emit player typed, and we're just going to pass in the input paragraph. I think now it should work. I think we should not face any weird bugs about now. So I'm going to refresh this. Yeah. So Atharva is the host. I'm going to start the game, I'm just gonna say unfortunately, comma, that is wrong. And for noob, I'm gonna say unfortunately, that is wrong. On the contrary, you see now noob is 1, even though otherwise host, noob is 1 because the actual leaderboard updated. The socket is sending us the leaderboard updates constantly. So like if you go to WebSocket here, so like okay, we need to actually reload the page here. I'm gonna do that right now. So reload the page. Oh yeah, the game has started. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just go to localhost 3000 again. I'm gonna create a new game. Athava. I'm just gonna copy this and I'm gonna paste it here. This is going to be noob. Now we do have a WebSocket, right? I'm gonna monitor this. So there are going to be a lot of events because since we type, everything is gonna go there. So if we have noob here, so if we start typing, this is responsive. That's why you are seeing it like this. To be more specific, authors often, yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave it like that. And here I'm gonna say to be more specific, authors often misinterpret the, I think yeah, that's fine. So noob is first. So you are saying player score. So you are getting the actual events of the player. And if I bring this up, if I look at one of these events, you are seeing the ID of the person, which is actually associated to noob, and you're actually seeing the scores. So the current score is 8 and that's the latest event. So they have stopped typing, so you're not getting any player score events anymore. So yeah, that is how WebSockets work, and if something is not working, that's how you should inspect it. So I think I also want to show you the responsiveness. So if we go like this is the mobile version. So you can see I think it's pretty responsive. I think that every part of the website is responsive. If there are any things you can add on it, I would really appreciate it. GitHub is in the link. You can go ahead and open a PR. Please do not open spam PRs. I really want only productive ones and not like update readme and stuff. Please do not do that. We have a drama. I have a video about open source contribution being like spam open source contribution. So please do not do all of that stuff. So yeah, people, we have finally done with the TypeRacer, kinda TypeRacer clone. Okay, so we are done with the video. We are done with the TypeRacer clone. We have actually built TypeRacer clone using Node.js, using socket.io, which is a library for WebSockets, and we have used Next.js, and we have used the latest and greatest Next.js app router, within which we have used Shadcn-ui, which is also the latest thing going on right now. So I hope you really liked the video. Like if you're sticking it till the end, like right now, if you have watched the video till the very end, I think I undersubscribe from you. So like just go ahead, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Make sure you leave something in the comments below. Make sure you leave what you learned the most, like what you found the most fascinating in this build. Please leave that in the comments below. Lastly, I wanted to share this video with your friends. Like if you have some friends who you think might get benefited a lot by watching this video. I know this video is a long video, but I'm pretty sure you understand how much I like to explain in this channel. So like every single thing. Yeah, I do copy stuff sometimes, but I really understand every single thing I copied so that you don't get left behind. So yeah, I would really love it if you share this video with your friends. Apart from that, I would really love your suggestions. Like, is there something you want me to build? Just like this TypeRacer clone, is there something you would like me to build? I'm not going to create exact UI to UI clone. This is not really my goal. My goal is to create something and explain the functionality of it. So I'm not just gonna go ahead and clone the UI stuff. It's already been done a lot of times on YouTube. So yeah, go ahead and let me know. And yeah, watch out for more of my videos. I am pretty sure you will like my content. So yeah, that's it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.